Thank you everyone for subscribing to Infinitely Productions. If you have not done so, please click the bell and subscribe, and we hope you enjoy our content.
Joe was lucky. Mafia bosses agreed that his partner probably deserved a beating. This was one of several events that convinced the bosses that Valachi was a loose cannon. Perhaps this is why, after almost 2 decades as a made man, Valachi was still performing the menial tasks of a low-ranking soldier.
When they really needed a big hit, you couldn't go to Joe Valachi. Nobody would go to him for that. First of all, to get a great assassin, you have to be inside. If you want to hit a mob guy, say, and that happened quite a bit, then you had to have somebody you trusted.
Valachi dabbled in every scam he could think of, but it didn't seem to matter.
He was in jukeboxes, he was in the numbers racket. He would do anything that he could to earn a buck. It's just that, in large measure, he was not a successful earner.
The mob did help Valachi out with one expensive leisure activity. He was an avid horse race fan and handicapper. By the 40s, he had gotten enough money together to purchase his own horse.
They're not running in the Kentucky Derby. They weren't thoroughbreds, I think they were trotters. He wasn't big enough to get in there like and go do it by himself. And he'd been there forever. So they want to take care of these guys. Part of it is to make sure they don't become informers.
But by the mid-1950s, Joe had branched out into the riskiest business that the mob undertook, drugs. Years earlier, mob boss Frank Costello made an official proclamation. Drug dealing was off limits.
What Costello wanted to do was to withdraw from illicit behaviors that posed a risk to him. Because the penalty for narcotics is so high, the risk of somebody turning on the boss is high. That never really stuck.
Valachi did not pass up an opportunity to grab some of that money.
His involvement in narcotics was established so that he could make enough money to go back into shylocking, running the numbers.
But Vito Genovese, Valachi's godfather, muscled in on his first drug deal, taking much of the profit. He then threatened Valachi.
Genovese said, "Don't do it anymore." But Joe went right out and did it again anyhow.
Valachi sold narcotics secretly and ended up in exactly the kind of trouble the Mafia feared. In 1956, he was convicted for trafficking heroin. It was the first time Valachi had spent time behind bars since his 1920s stint at Sing Sing. Valachi got out in time to hear about a fiasco that would embarrass the mob for decades to come, and would give him one more motivation to turn. In the fall of 1957, mob families gathered for a summit in upstate New York. Gangster Joe Valachi wasn't there. He was just a soldier, not someone who would be consulted on important issues. On the agenda, narcotics and Vito Genovese's unsanctioned hit on mob boss Albert Anastasia.
What was on the agenda? One was, why did Genovese kill Albert Anastasia? One boss kills another boss without permission. He had to explain that. Another issue on the agenda was narcotics.
The rural Appalachin retreat had been picked because of its secluded location. But when a vigilant local state trooper noticed limos and mobsters with silk suits invading his town, he set up roadblocks. Many of the mafiosi fled into the woods.
There were men in Brooks Brothers suits running through the woods near Appalachin to get away from that house that day. I mean, they were not running from anything except exposure.
Joe Valachi heard about the spectacle and was disgusted.
Mob guys in sharkskin suits running through the woods like scared rabbits. Big, powerful guys. Boy, you really stood up to the cops. So what kind of example is that?
I guess Valachi's point was, these guys are acting like idiots. We're not supposed to be looking up to them. And it's one of the things that he used to justify him not wanting to be a boss.
Law enforcement reports from the Appalachin meeting forced the government to finally acknowledge the Mafia's existence. In the coming years, the Justice Department would make toppling the mob a priority.
When the Fed started looking at the post-1957 mob using mandatory minimums and undercover operations, they began to get convictions.
Within 2 years of Appalachin, boss Vito Genovese was convicted of dealing narcotics and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Then, in 1959, Valachi notched his second conviction for trafficking heroin from Italy. He skipped town rather than serve his sentence. Hoping for leniency, Joe decided to turn himself in to the feds after months on the lam. He knew this time around he faced a long prison sentence.
Joe didn't have a chance. So all he wanted to do was to stay alive, but he wanted revenge, and revenge is what motivated him. And revenge is what I took advantage of.
In prison, Valachi feared he was a marked man, so much so that he beat to death an inmate he mistakenly thought was out to kill him. At this point, Valachi fell into the hands of the FBI and the McClellan Committee.
During this 14-month period of undeclared war and what you term declared war, do you know how many people were killed altogether during that time on either side or both sides?
Senator, I got the score. The score was we lost 1, and they lost from 40 to 60.
Valachi described the ritualistic nature of the mob.
Everybody gets up and shake hands. They say a few more words together, which I can't recall. They also said in Sicilian.
But did you know what they meant?
Well, I never asked what it meant, but it meant like sort of in the style of an organization, or in that style. But you don't bother. I didn't bother. I never did bother.
You never did what?
I never bothered to find out what it meant, but I have an idea what it meant.
Well, you had an idea. What was your idea?
All tied up. Oh, we're all tied up.
We're all together.
All together.
All together.
Right.
You sink together, hang together, live together.
Yes.
He spoke with an encyclopedic knowledge that some found hard to believe.
He was a low-level member in one large family. How is he identifying people in these other families? He can tell his own history. How does he get this comprehensive knowledge?
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and check out more of our content. Feel free to give your feedback and suggestions on what we should do next in the comments. This is Infinite Lee Productions. We love ya.